In this video, we're going to be rebuilding the ground pound mechanic you've seen in tons of games, specifically Nintendo, like Super Mario World 2 or Donkey Kong, but there's plenty of others. We're going to be building a character that can jump, spin, and slam into the ground, and when he does, the camera's going to shake for a little effect just to add some flavor to it. And as always, the assets used in this tutorial will be linked in the description. But before we get working, let's just cover off some of the basics here that you're going to need in order to have this work. So in our project settings, you want to make sure in rendering textures, you have the default texture filter to nearest. And in input mappings, you're going to want to set up the jump and left right. Outside of that, we are going to have a character. So this is going to be my character. He's going to have a very basic movement script where we just jump and move left and right. And as you saw, I also do have a level where it's just a very simple level with one platform. And this is what we're going to have right now. So we're going to be adding a camera and everything else to make this look a little bit better. Before we do all of that, let's dive into the character script. So let's open that up. And to get this working, we need to add some more variables. And the first one is going to be a constant, which is going to be our pound speed. And the pound speed is going to be when we are on our downward path to the ground, how fast we're going. We're also going to need an enum for state, which is going to be how we're going to be handling our states. And we're going to have normal, spin start, ground pound, and landing. And we're going to have a variable for our current state, which is going to default to state.normal. And in this physics process, we are going to tweak it a little bit. So we're going to have a match on all of our different states. And all of this right here is our normal state movement. So just to try and help keep this a little clean, we're going to cut this out here. And we're going to make a function just called handle normal movement. Which doesn't take in anything. And we're just going to pass it all of that right there. Now we can do a match on our current state. And if the state is normal, we're just going to handle our normal movement. So now I can go back and play this and nothing has changed. I can still do everything. So even though we don't have the animations yet, let's just build out how we're going to actually handle all of the other states. So we're going to need some more methods. First one is going to be start spin. The other one is going to be start ground pound. We're also going to need land pound. And lastly, we're going to return to normal. We can just start there because the only thing we're going to do here is set the current state back to normal. And we're going to go into our animation player. We're going to play idle. In land pound, we're going to set our current state to the landing state. And we're going to play our animation players, pound, land, animation. In start ground pound, the only thing we're going to do here is set the state. So that can be ground pound. And in start spin, we go current state equal to spin start. We're going to have an animation player, which is going to play our spin pound animation. And with all of this now made, we do need to add one last check in our handle normal movement. So we need to check for a ground pound, which is any jump press while we're in the air. So if we're not on the floor, and input is action just pressed, going to be our jump, we start our spin. Now we can go back up to our physics process and we can go back to matching on our states. So in our spin start, all we're going to do is set our velocity back to vector 2.0, so we're not moving. In our ground pound state, the velocity on the y-axis is going to be our pound speed, and then the velocity on the x-axis will just be 0, so we're not moving horizontally. And then if we are on floor, we land pound. Lastly, on the state for our landing, we just return to velocity where we're at vector 2.0, so we're not moving. So now with all that set up, we can actually go in and create these animations in our player. So let's bring up the animation player. Let's have this guy here so we can see him. And we're going to first make our spin pound animation. Zoom in a little bit here, and this is going to be 0.8 seconds long, we're going to snap on 0.05. And the first thing we'll work with is going to be our sprite. The first frame that I'm going to use is going to be 56. So let's key this in. We want to go to 57, 58, 59, and lastly 60. So this animation here, or this frame here, is going to be what we're going to be looking like when we're actually on the pound down. Then we're going to go to our rotation here, and back at the 0-second mark, we're going to key in the 0, and then at 0.3, or right at the end of this animation here, we're going to go 360, and let's key that in. So let's just see what this looks like right now. So that's what we have. It's just going to do a spin. Just add some flair at the top of our jump when we're at the ground pound. And then the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to add track, and we're actually going to call a method. It's going to be on our player. And right here, we'll call it right after this. We're going to insert a key, and we want to call our start ground pound method right here. And that's all we're going to have to do for that animation. We need to make a new animation for our pound land. And this is going to be 0.4 seconds. So we're going to build in a delay of like basically 0.3 of when we hit the ground, we're not going to be able to move immediately. So the frame that I'm going to use is going to be 60. So let's key that in. And all we're going to do here is add one more call method, same thing on the player. And right at the end, we're going to return to normal. So with all that said and done, we can actually go test this out. So you can press space and then in the air, boom, and then we return afterwards. So that's what we're aiming for right now. But in order to make this a little prettier and actually have some more effect, let's go add a camera to our player. So let's add the camera 2D node. I'm going to zoom in, I think 2x2 here. I think that will look good. So let's just quick test this. Yeah, I think that is better. Cool. Let's add a script to this. So we're going to need both the ready and the process, but let's add some variables first. We're going to have a shake amount, which will default to 0. We're going to have a default offset, which is going to equal to our offset. We're going to have a variable for our X position, variable for our Y position, and lastly, a variable for RNG, which can equal random number generator new. In the ready method, we're going to go to set process, pass in false, and then we just do RNG randomize. Let's create another method we're going to need first. It's going to be shake, which will take in an amount of our shake, which is an integer. Sorry, it's actually going to be a float. And then we just set our shake amount equal to the amount, and then we set our process back to true. And inside of our process method is where the bulk of the actual shaking is going to happen, or actually where all the shaking is going to happen. So if the shake amount is greater than 0, we're going to get our position X. We're going to randomize it. So we're going to RNG rand F range between -1.0 and 1.0 times the shake amount times 2.0. And let's copy this, and we're going to do the same exact thing for the Y, except we're not going to multiply it by 2. Then we go to our offset, and we set it to vector 2 on the position X and the position Y that we just got. Then our shake amount is going to be equal to lerp, so we're going to linear interpolate on our shake amount, 0 and 0.3. And then if our shake amount is less than or equal to 0.1, our shake amount gets defaulted back to 0. Our offset goes back to the default offset. And then we set process back to false. And in order, if show, that's not what we want. We want shake amount. In order to connect all of this into our player, we have to go into the land pound method that we created. And after all of this, we just do, if we have a camera, we want to do camera.shake I'm going to pass in 8.0. So we're going to need this onReady here to have our camera reference. So now we can actually call shake. And when we go and play this, okay, yeah, I got an error here. I was moving too quickly. This should be position Y, not 2 position X's. And now when we do this, there we go. You can change the intensity of the shake effect if you want, but this is how you can set up a basic ground pound effect in Godot. So I hope you like this. If you want to see any other mechanics from old classic games, definitely comment below and let me know.